Greetings YouTube! In this video I'm going to show you how I made this body warmer. I've made this with a chunky wool using a combination of knitting and crochet. This is a beginner friendly project, and in the description I'm going to leave a list of both knitting and crochet stitches used. I will also leave links to the beginner tutorial playlist for knitting and crochet for both left and right hand. So let's get started. I want my body warmer to come down to the upper hip or high hip, where the top of the hip bone sits. To begin, we need to take a series of measurements. We take our full length, which we measure from the base of our neck at the shoulder to however long we want this piece. I'm measuring down to my high hip. I have a full length of 20 inches. We then measure our underarm length, which we measure from just below the armpit, and I go down to that same high hip length. My underarm length comes to 12 inches. We measure the circumference of where we want our piece to end. Again, for me, that's the high hip. That's 32 inches for me. We take our across shoulder measurement, which we measure across the back from shoulder tip to shoulder tip. Mine is 13 inches. We measure our shoulder length, which we measure from the base of the neck to the tip of the shoulder. Mine is 4 inches. Other measurements we'll need will be the waist, and waist to the bottom of our garment. For this project I'm using a super chunky yarn in this mustard yellow, and I'll be using 12mm needles. I've knitted a swatch about 5 inches square, and we're going to use this to determine how many stitches to cast on. So all we do is measure how many stitches we have in an inch. My swatch has about 2 stitches per inch. I'm going to split this into 3 parts, 1 for the back and 2 for the front. I'm going to use half my upper hip measurement for the back, and I will use 1/4 of my upper hip measurement for each of the front pieces. I'll be working on the back first. We begin by taking our lower measurement, which for me was the high hip, which was 32 inches, and I'm going to divide that by 2, which is 16. And because my swatch had 2 stitches per inch, I times that number by 2, which gives us 32. So I need to cast on 32 stitches. I cast on my 32 stitches using a long tail cast on, and I begin by knitting a 1 by 1 rib stitch for the first 4 rows. Now I've knitted my 4 rows of rib stitch. From here on we're going to work in rows of stocking stitch. We keep going until our piece reaches our underarm length measurement. For me that was 12 inches. I've reached my underarm measurement of 12 inches. So now it's time to shape the armholes and decrease the stitches for the upper back. To figure out how many stitches we need to decrease, we take our across shoulder measurement. For me that was 13 inches. And we multiply that by stitches per inch. For me that was 2. 13 multiplied by 2 is 26. And we subtract that number from the number of stitches that we cast on. So I cast on 32 stitches, subtract 26, that gives me a total of 6. So I need to decrease 6 stitches. And we're going to decrease stitches on either side of the piece at the beginning and end of each odd row. So we divide that number by 2, which gives us 3. So we decrease 2 stitches over 3 odd rows. We knit our first stitch, and we're going to decrease our next 2 stitches. At the beginning of the row, we'll do a slip slip knit decrease. And then we continue knitting across the row until we have 3 stitches left. And when we reach the final 3 stitches, we knit 2 together and knit the final stitch. We purl all the stitches in the next row, and when we come to our knit row, we make our next set of decreases, knitting the first stitch, making a slip slip knit decrease, knitting across until the final 3 stitches, knitting 2 together and knitting the final stitch. We purl all the stitches in the next row, We carry on until we make our calculated number of decreases. For me, that's 6. Now I've done my 6 decreases, and I have my 26 stitches on the needle for my across shoulder. Now we continue knitting in stocking stitch until our piece measures our full length measurement. For me, that's 20 inches. And when our piece reaches our full length measurement, we can cast off all the stitches on the needle. With the back side of our piece done, we can begin with the front side. And remember, for the back side we took half our lower circumference measurement. For me that was 16, and because the front is going to be split into 2 parts, we divide that by 2 again, which gives me 8. We multiply that number by our stitches per inch. For me that was 2, which gives me 16. So I cast on 16 stitches. I've cast on my 16 stitches using a long tail cast on, and I begin by knitting the first 4 rows in 1 by 1 rib. And with our 4 rows of rib stitch done, we continue working our piece in stocking stitch until we reach our underarm length measurement. For me, that's 12 inches. I've now knitted until my underarm measurement, and now we need to start shaping the underarm. Up until this point, both the front pieces are the same. From now on, the left and right pieces are going to mirror each other. We'll begin with the left piece, but first we need to figure out how much we need to decrease. We take our shoulder length measurement, for me that was 4 inches, and we multiply that by our stitches per inch, which gives me a total of 8. We then subtract that number from the stitches we have cast on. I have 16, so 16 minus 8 equals 8, so I need to decrease 8 stitches. Now I'm going to decrease 2 stitches over 4 knit rows. For the first 2 knit rows, I'm going to decrease 2 at the underarm. For the remaining decrease rows, we make 1 decrease at the underarm and 1 at the neckline. If you've calculated an uneven number of decrease stitches, make the final decrease at the neckline. We knit the first stitch, then we make a slip-slip knit decrease twice. Now we've made our 2 decrease stitches, we continue knitting along the row. Purl back across, and for our second decrease row we do the same as the first. Knit the first stitch, make 2 slip-slip knit decreases, and carry on knitting along the row. We make those 2 decreases together only for the first 2 knit rows. From the 3rd knit row onwards, we're going to start decreasing 1 at each end, a slip-slip knit at the beginning and 2 together at the end. Knit the first stitch, slip-slip knit, knit until the final 3 stitches, knit 2 together and knit the final stitch. And with every knit row, we knit 1, slip-slip knit, knit until the final 3, knit 2 together and knit the last one, and we do that until we've made all our decrease stitches. And when we've made all our decreases, we continue working in stocking stitch until we reach our full length measurement. For me that's 20. And when we reach our full length measurement, we cast off all the stitches. That's the left side done. Now let's start on the right side. I've started the right side the same way as the left. 4 rows of rib stitch, and then stocking stitch up until my underarm measurement, which was 12 inches. Now to begin shaping the armhole, we want to make our decreases. For the left side, we made the decreases at the beginning of the row. For the right side, we're going to make the decreases at the end. So we knit across the row until we have 5 stitches remaining. We knit 2 together twice and knit the final stitch. We purl the next row, and for our next decrease row, we knit across until we have 5 stitches remaining. We knit 2 together twice and knit the final stitch. Purl the next row. Just like the left side, we do our first 2 decrease rows with 2 decreases at the armpit. For the rest of the rows, we decrease 1 stitch on each side. I needed to decrease 8 stitches altogether. I've already decreased 4, so I need to do 2 more decrease rows with 1 on each end. We knit the first stitch, slip, slip, knit, knit across the row until we have 3 stitches remaining, knit 2 together, and knit the final stitch. And we carry on decreasing at each end until we've made our required number of decreases. And when we've made all our decreases, we carry on working in stocking stitch until we reach our full length measurement. Then we can cast off. Now the front and back pieces are complete and we're almost ready to join them together. But before we do, let's make the waist ties. To figure out the length of our waist ties, we need to take our waist measurement. Mine is 27 inches, and we add 12 inches to that, which gives me 39. I'm just going to round that up to an even 40, and because we're making 2 waist ties, we're going to divide that by 2, which gives me 20. So I'm going to make 2 ties of 20 inches. Now this is where we're going to start our crochet. I'm using a 12mm hook. And we make a chain for as long as we need our waist ties to be. So I'm making a chain of 20 inches. When we reach our 20 inches, we chain 1 more. Then we make a single crochet into the second chain from the hook. And we carry on along the row, making a single crochet into each chain. And when we reach the end, we make 4 single crochets into the final chain. And now we work back along the other side, making a single crochet into each chain stitch. At the end of the row, cast off. And we make another exactly the same. And with the waist ties done, we're ready to join all our pieces together. I'm going to crochet my pieces together. You could also use a yarn needle and join them using a whip stitch, but I don't have a yarn needle big enough to take this chunky wool, so I'll be using a crochet hook. I've done 2 examples here of 2 seams using 2 different sizes of crochet hooks. This side was done using a 12mm crochet hook, which is the size recommended for this yarn. This side was done using a 6.5mm hook. The larger the hook, the larger the stitches appear. We see the side done with the 12mm is much chunkier than the one done with the 6.5. I don't want too much bulk in my seam, so I'm going to use the smaller hook. Use as small a hook as you can get away with, one that's big enough that you can still grab the yarn and pull it through. I might even get away with a smaller size, such as a 4.5 or a 5, but I found a 6.5 is enough to not be too bulky. I hope all of that makes sense, so let's crochet our pieces together. We hold our shoulder pieces with the right sides together, lining up the outer corners. And we join our pieces together for the length of the front shoulder. picking up the back loop of the stitch of the piece in front and the front loop of the stitch of the piece in the back. We add new yarn and make a slip stitch into the back loop of the front loop of the back, and slip stitch. Back loop, front loop, slip stitch, and we carry on until our shoulder pieces are joined together. Then we can cast off. And we repeat for the other shoulder. Now with our shoulders joined, we can close up the sides. When closing up the sides, we also want to incorporate our waist ties. To find the right placement for our ties, we take our waist to full length measurement. Mine was 5 inches, and we measure this from the bottom. And we place a stitch marker. We take the flat end of our waist tie and we line up the bottom stitch with our marker. I'm just going to use that marker to hold it in place. The top, middle and bottom stitches on the tie should line up with 3 stitches along the edge of our garment. We use a marker to hold the top and bottom stitches in place. I line up the edges of the right side, and starting from the bottom, we're going to work into the stitches along the side. We can see along the edge we have these bumps, and we want to pick up the stitches in between those bumps, making sure to pick up 2 loops on each side. Once again, I'm using my 6.5mm hook to reduce bulk in the seam, and starting at the bottom, I pick up those stitches, add new yarn, and we work along the edges, making a slip stitch into each pair of stitches along the edge. And when we reach our stitch markers, we make sure to pick up the waist tie as well as the 2 outer layers. And we carry on making slip stitches until we reach the underarm. And we repeat the same for the other side. Now with all the pieces joined together, we can start tidying up the armholes. I'm using my 12mm crochet hook, and I'm starting about halfway down the back piece. Once again, we'll be picking up the stitches in between these bumps, picking up both loops. We take our new yarn, pull it through, and chain 1. And into that same stitch, we make a single crochet. And we make a single crochet into each stitch until we reach the bottom of the armhole. And when we come to the bottom, we're going to make a single crochet decrease, picking up a stitch on either side of the seam. So we pick up the stitch just before the seam, yarn over, pull it through, but we don't complete the stitch. We pick up the stitch on the other side of the seam, yarn over, pull it through. Then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And we carry on making a single crochet into each stitch until we come back to our first stitch. And when we come back to the first stitch, we insert our hook into that first single crochet and make a slip stitch. And we cast off. And we do the same for the other side. And now we're going to make the collar around the front of the piece. Again, I'm using my 12mm crochet hook. I'm starting in the bottom right corner, again picking up both loops of the stitches in between the bumps on the edge. Come through the first stitch, I take my new yarn, pull the yarn through and chain 2. Into the next stitch we make a half double crochet and carry on along the row, making a half double crochet into each stitch. And when we come to the top at the back, we make half double crochets into each of the knit stitches. And we work our way into the stitches back down the other side until we reach the end. We chain 2, turn our work, and we work back around, making a half double crochet into the top of each half double crochet from the previous row. And when we come to the end, we make a half double crochet into that first chain 2 we made. We chain 2, turn our work, and we work one more row of half double crochets, making one half double crochet into the top of each half double crochet from the previous row. And at the end of this row we can cast off. And our collar is complete. The last thing we need to do is weave in any remaining tails. And we're finished. I'm very pleased with how this turned out. It has a bit of a 70s vibe to it. A good and stylish way to keep yourself warm on those spring and autumn days. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.